Welcome to today's edition of our Employability Skills Training. This is the second part of our discussion regarding questions that are frequently asked by fresh graduates in a bid to look for employment opportunities. We will be looking into the conversation of salaries and how you position yourself to ask for the right salary. Welcome. The second question I wanted to respond to in terms of the questions that would be frequently asked by recent graduates is a question of salary. How do I position myself? How do I ask for the right salary? How do I ask? I do not ask for something bigger than the employer can provide or something way too low than what they were ready to offer. And I just have a few comments and suggestions around this question. One, it is important to know that almost all employers will have a budget for whatever position that they are advertising for or even that they are offering. They will have a budget, and most of the times when you are a recent graduate, you are yet to get to the competitive levels whereby they are likely to flex that budget significantly. So entry-level positions will almost always have more or less a rigid budget. So it helps to know that with the employer or the prospective employer having a budget, it is likely that if you have compelling propositions, you are already proving that you can provide good value, they will be forthright with you as to what the position is entitled to. So I would invert that question into you being able to demonstrate that you will bring in value. And basically, some of the ways that you demonstrate that you bring in value is by talking about what it is that you can do. So it helps to research about your employer, what they do, in your own understanding what it is that you could bring in around what they do. Because once you have a compelling case for why you should be onboarded, then it is possible that then the employer will be forthright about what it is that they offer. The second point or suggestion is that it is good to research about what an employer is likely to offer. Of course, if this is an established institution, private sector, an NGO, or even the government, in many cases the government has very rigid salary structures where I don't think it will be amenable to negotiations, particularly for entry-level positions. It's good to research about what an employer can offer. How you do that is that you could speak to friends, family members, and their networks. Of course, nowadays with LinkedIn, you can easily search for people working in an organization that you're interested in and then reach out to them, request to reach out to them, maybe send invites via LinkedIn and probably have one-on-one meetings or a phone conversation or an online meeting where you can inquire about issues related to compensation in that organization in line with the position that you're looking to apply for. Always going into an interview or a salary conversation with a prospective employer from a point of knowledge makes you competitive. Indeed, it makes you compelling. It's a way of making yourself compelling because you will not sound outrageous. For example, a position that is attracting a pay of about 15,000, you're asking for 55,000. The third thing, which is closely related to the second, is that it's also good to know what would be compensation in comparable organizations for the same role. That means you're looking for the market value for the position that you are looking for. It is important to know. For example, if it is in the banking sector, you will notice that banks will gravitate around a certain figure for entry-level positions, with some of them probably paying a little bit higher and some of them paying a little lower. But basically, the median or the average, you can talk about the average. Basically, that's what I'm saying. So you can think about the average. So if an entry-level position in some of the lowly paying banks is about 30,000, but in the high paying ones is about 50,000. Then a salary of between 35 to 40 would be around the average. So that information helps you to come out as someone who knows the sector that you are looking to get into. You know the players there, and you also know what is the market value for the position that you are looking for. That's very, very important. Maybe a final consideration would be the whole aspect of what would you be comfortable with that would meet your needs, maybe not your wants. So that if you are, for example, to commute from the place where you plan to live, and then you're talking about meals and accommodation, probably you are living on your own, and so you need to pay rent, and you need to pay your electricity, water, transport, and food, and some clothing consideration. What would that budget look like? So that then you are able to know what is the least that you can take for you to be productively engaged in the organization that you are looking for. Sometimes in desperation, we take up roles for amounts that literally cannot maintain us. You cannot effectively commute to the place of work, or even be able to pay reasonable accommodation, or even afford meals, 2-3 meals in a day. And certainly you will struggle. At the end of the day, you will not be productive. And you may actually end up losing the opportunity, not because you are a bad worker, but because you're really distracted, in the sense that you're not able to meet your day-to-day obligations. So sometimes the trade-off can be tricky. You need to realize that you need to live and live modestly, decently full, and you cannot be able to perform in a job if it is paying you or it's compensating you way below what your reasonable minimums would be. In as much as you may be desperate for an opportunity, in as much as you may be really looking forward to joining an organization, it is important to make that consideration of what it is that will be a reasonable minimum pay for the opportunity. Otherwise, knowing your worth is really important. Knowing your worth, what is the value that you're bringing into the role, and therefore what would be a reasonable compensation for that value. But above all, it is always important to be flexible, so that many employers, if the only thing standing between them taking you and you joining is the compensation, they will be upfront, they will be forthright with what can be given. So once they are forthright in terms of what they can offer for the position, then it is important to be flexible. If it is meeting the minimum wage that you would expect, then flexibility is always helpful, because it could be the last checkbox that the employer is looking at. Because again, for entry-level position, for recent graduates positions, there's a lot of training that the employer will put into you. And so the employer is also considering that they are adding a lot of value into you. They are looking at it as a training opportunity. Rarely do people come from college and universities, at least in contexts such as here in Kenya, are ready for the job. This skill set are not directly transferable. There'll be a lot of adaptation, a lot of customization that goes into making you a good fit for the role. And for that investment, the employer then will always be inclined to offer it a little lower, maybe than what will be your goal, what will be your want. But again, most reasonable employers then will be shooting for something that is capable of meeting your minimum needs, and then progressively offer you opportunities to prove yourself and grow yourself. And then as you grow yourself, then they could consider increments to your pay. So again, putting in a statement, once the prospective employer has disclosed what is on offer, putting in a statement and would you consider an increment, giving me an increment once I prove myself for the first 6 months, and just seeing how open the prospective employer is to that kind of comment would also help you to know whether this is an area that you have growth opportunities or you do not have growth opportunities, whether it is from a compensation standpoint or even from a skill set standpoint. Remember ultimately that the first job, although very critical in determining what trajectory your career will take, is also very important as a basis for growing yourself into future better opportunities. That reminds me of the old adage that goes that a bird in hand is better than Nile in the bush. So that sometimes, although that could also mean that you have a scarcity mentality, the flip side of it is that an opportunity that is already there does not really mean that that's the end. That's not your end. It could be that's where you begin from, because a journey of 1,000 miles has to have the beginning step. So you begin from there and progressively prove yourself. It will be more clear to you as to what you're capable of doing, in as much as it will also be clear to your prospective employer about your capabilities and what it is that you're able to do. And therefore, if the two of you are reasonable, both your prospective employer and yourself are reasonable, then the sky would not be the limit. That marks the end of today's conversation. Feel free to send your questions and comments, whether by responding to this video or even sending us an email at info@jeypent.com. We would be more than happy to respond to you. Perhaps you could also let us know what are the topics we could cover in subsequent videos, because that's the way we keep on building each other. In our next episode, we'll talk a little bit more about what about those people that do not want actually to work for anyone. You want to be self-employed right from the get-go. That would be our conversation in the next episode. So thank you very much and see you next time.